Honorable Minister of Defense, Rwanda, distinguished participants to this symposium, Major General Emmanuel Bayingana, and I will be the moderator for this session. The topic for this morning is national interagency collaboration and coordination mechanisms for sustainable peace, security, and development. This is the last session of this symposium. Perhaps it was deliberate to crown this symposium. Now, to address this very important topic, we have a panel of eminent personalities here in front of you. We have the Honorable Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Rwanda, Mr. Johnston Businje, who is the third from the left. Thank you, sir, for coming. We also have Major General retired Frank Mugambaje, the acting Chief of Staff of the Reserve Force in Rwanda Defense Force, representing the Chief of Defense Staff of Rwanda Defense Force. General Sir, you are welcome. We also have Colonel retired Jean-Noel Hunga, the Secretary General of the Rwanda Investigation Bureau. Thank you for coming. He's the second from the left. Then we have Commissioner of Police, Christopher Bizimungu. He's the Commandant of the National Police College. He's standing in for the Inspector General of Police of Rwanda National Police. Thanks for coming. Last but not least, we have Lieutenant Colonel Regis Gatalaiha, Director General of the Rwanda Immigration and Immigration Service Department, standing in for the Secretary General of the National Intelligence and Security Service. You're welcome as well. Now, this topic this morning, I want to kick it off with not a personal story of what I saw, personal witnessed, but let me just use a movie, a movie that came out in 1998. It's called The Siege. The Siege. Siege, S-I-E-G-E. Sierra India, Echo Golf Echo. The Siege is a movie which came out in 1998, directed by one Edward Zwick, and it's about a fictional situation in which terrorist cells have made civil attacks in New York City, in New York in the USA. Those who have never watched it, please, I encourage you to watch the movie. It stars the famous actor Denzel Washington and others like Annette Bening and even Bruce Willis. Now, the plot of the movie is that terrorists have infiltrated in New York City, and they are causing havoc, one incident after another. And the FBI intervenes to deal with the terrorists. But in the process, some of the terrorists are actually agents of the CIA. And some people in the CIA would want to protect them in order not to spoil their operations, their intelligence operations. So the situation keeps on worsening and worsening until finally the President of the United States is forced to declare martial law, and the commanding officer of the 101st Airborne Division, a Major General, is given orders to intervene and restore order. And he uses military tactics to deal with the situation. And you can see tanks loading in the city, in the center of New York, and he does so many things. And that's the whole thing about this movie. Now, this is just fiction. But it shows how different security agencies can work together, collaborate, well or not well. And I just hope this one can help kick off our discussion this morning. Now, let me begin with the Honorable Minister of Justice. The Honorable Minister of Justice, I want you to be the first one to begin with this discussion. First of all, do we need laws to define the missions of the different agencies gathered here this morning on this panel? Do we need the laws to define? And if so, is there a universal template? Is there a universal template to determine the missions and the structures of the military, the police, the intelligence service, and the investigation departments of every country in this world? Does the UN produce such a template, or each government does its own, the way it deems fit? And if the laws are necessary, what laws govern the Rwanda Defense Force, the Rwanda National Police, the NISS, and RIB, so that you can set the ball rolling? Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, moderator, colleagues on the panel, colleagues in the audience, good morning. Perhaps before I go to the specific response to the questions you just asked me, moderator, let me make a few broad points about institutions, about why do we have laws to govern institutions. I want to make a few points, and perhaps we should be able to discuss them later. One is that great leadership and great vision consists in building institutions to carry nations' ideals and values and that vision to eternity. Us as human beings, we are mortal. We live for a certain time and we are no longer active and alive later. But ideals, visions, dreams, these good things we aspire to have in our countries can only last if we institutionalize them. If we have laws and rules that make them part of our society, that make them impossible to remove or not easy to remove. So that was one point I wanted to make, that great leadership and vision consists in building institutions that will carry nations' ideals, values, and vision to eternity. Second point is that strong and visionary leadership can effect change, but legally established institutions can immortalize that change. So that's the second point I wanted to make. The third one, coming closer to home, I was going through the institutional development in Rwanda. In 1994, we had basically one major functioning institution doing everything. It was called Rwanda Patriotic Army. It wasn't just doing army work, it was doing health work, it was doing water management, it was doing electricity, it was doing justice, it was doing agriculture, it was doing mining. That was the RPA. Today, we have more than 200 institutions. Some are constitutional, established in the Constitution. Some are established after the Constitution, but nevertheless entrenched as constitutional. Some are legal, some are subject-specific, and in my view, all these have a relationship, a very strong relationship with the 1994 situation. They all grow one way or the other, directly or indirectly, remotely or closely, from that situation of the RPA, later RDF nucleus. So the point I'm trying to make is that institutions drive and define things: mission, vision, powers, duties, limits, and so on. So to answer your question, moderator, one, there's no universal template for doing institutions. I don't think there is any. But there are textbooks, there are examples, there are those who have gone through these 200 years, 200 and something years. All those are very good research material. They are all good reference material. But there's no universal template for doing whatever institution you want to make. Our own institutions that you asked about, the RDF, the NISS, the REEB, perhaps I'm not, you just asked me because I'm the Attorney General and so on, but when I look around the table here, I think there should be others who will explain it better than I. But it is absolutely important that we have laws and rules, laws establishing them and rules governing them. Because at the history, they are all connected at the hip. They all are born from one institution, from one situation, from one establishment. And then this establishment continues producing the offshoots from RPA to the National Police, to National Intelligence, to Investigation Bureau, to others are going to be born. I think recently the Financial Intelligence Center was born. So laws come in play because the ideals, the dreams we have for these institutions can only be clarified, can only be sustained, can only be immortalized if we turn them into, if we turn these dreams and ideals into written law. The whole concept of the rule of law that our Constitution announces from, first, last, and our own aspirations as a country mean that the public that we serve, the 12 million Rwandans and everybody else that is in Rwanda, would find it problematic if they only relied on vision and dream and good leadership and so on without specific references to laws, to rules that govern these institutions. These very institutions themselves, because of their history, their common descent, they are descended from one situation, they obviously need laws and rules to govern them so that each of them knows where they begin and where they have an overlap and where they work together and where they don't go beyond and then their limits. So if you don't have laws, then you are going to be depending on a good leader in RDF, a good leader in NISS, a good leader in RNP to do good things. But that is not assured all the time. What is assured is that there are rules of the game, and whether you are good, whether you are not good, whether you read it, whether you didn't read it, it will be there for you to know that you are either doing it because the law allows you to do it, or you can't do it because the law doesn't allow you to do it. So my take, moderator, is that broadly, we must have institutions because they sustain what we think is good. They live beyond who we are, but they take who we are with nations to eternity. And secondly, these institutions of ours, given their history, given their growth, given their many, many similarities, and sometimes symbiotic relationship, it becomes imperative that we should have laws that define their powers, that define their limits, that defines their organization, that defines how people enter them, how people exit them, so that the good ideas, the ideals, the vision, and everything that we carry from our old founding days continue to translate into legal, ascertainable, definable provisions that even the young generations and posterity can not only follow, but build on and make even a better nation for us. Thank you.
So, General Mugambaji, the Rwanda Defense Force and its predecessor, the Rwanda Patriotic Army, is the first among the security agencies we have in Rwanda today. Take us through that journey, how it did its job before the other agencies were created, and how do you welcome the new agencies when they were created? Did you welcome them with open arms, or you saw them as competitors? And what philosophy has informed the working relationship between the first organization, that's the RPA, RDF, and the new organizations in security? Thank you.
I am so delighted. I really appreciated when I got the information that I should come and represent my immediate boss, the Chief of Defense Staff. You know, during that struggle and the background I have given you about the different assignments I held, one of them was about political mobilization, not only in the armed forces, but also in the civilians, which actually gives me a long memory about this collaboration we are talking about today. I used to be the chief political commissar throughout the whole struggle. But I also held a position in the RPF, yes, the political organization. I was assistant commissioner for political and mass mobilization. I am mentioning this not because I'm adding to the, I'm simply saying that this collaboration is not something new. And I will elaborate and give examples that has a long history. It originates right from the time we started the struggle. Let me use, in the same spirit of collaboration, let me give a little short background to add to what the Honorable Minister has given, the background of laws and everything about the institutions that were formed, but orient it in the direction of that sector that I'm here to represent and talk about. So, I've been asked to give a background of the long journey, a very long one indeed, that has brought Rwanda to its current status, a status of peace and stability and growing socio-economic development. But we all know from a situation that was considered by some, not a long time ago, where Rwanda was considered a failed state. Remember the immediate post-genocide situation. Everybody, media, everybody, Rwanda can never be, can never reconstruct again. That was common news. from well-wishers, those who thought really, genuinely, that because of the tragedy that Rwanda had faced and gone through, it will never reconstruct. That was after the genocide against the Tutsi in 1994. It is for that reason that it's important to detail the role of the RDF in this journey. But to be able to do that, we need a brief background. And let me give about 4 elements that are unforgettable and should guide anybody who wants to do a kind of transformation, even in the most difficult of times. One point that I want to talk about, I mentioned it's not anything new. I'm sure we all know about these things. It's not rocket science at all. Is that national security is obviously the most strategic preoccupation of all states. I mean, if you don't guarantee security, what else do? You'll crumble. It's like building a structure, you don't give it a firm foundation, it crumbles. You've really wasted your time. So national security, as a matter of fact, is the most strategic preoccupation of states. Why else would you be there? But addition to that is that it must envisage the protection of the citizenry and provision of conducive atmosphere for the pursuit of the aspirations of the people as a priority. Security is not just something, you cannot eat security. The security must create the conditions that enable the citizenry to engage and earn a meaningful life. Some of us, meaningful life had even become unimaginable because, like I mentioned, we reached a stateless state. You belong nowhere in this world. Can you imagine that situation? Where you reach, nobody is recognizing you. On the contrary, people are enjoying rights, human rights, and everything else. You have absolutely nothing. They are talking about living in Kenya in Uganda and joining the army in Uganda. That was after 10 years after my graduation and circulated to Kenya, to everywhere. The world was blocking me, and it became necessary to struggle and regain dignity. I'm speaking that not as a person, I'm talking about that generation, and in fact, one of the fundamental reasons that led to the liberation struggle. And so, that is point number 1. National security is certainly a key pillar in nation building and benefiting the people and giving the people the dignity that should, everybody desires and deserves. But that national security must also be associated with creating the conducive environment for people to work for their betterment. Second point that I want to mention is the pillar of ideological clarity. Ideological clarity means, therefore, that yes, we are engaged in this transformation. What do we want to achieve? The Honorable Minister mentioned visionary leadership. That's what it is about. Envisage what is possible now, envisage where you want to go, envisage where the future should be during your time and beyond your time. That's the vision. I will give you 2 quotations because I always consider them extremely important. I could quote many, but even at the beginning of the struggle, His Excellency, our President, Commander-in-Chief, I remember one, and I'm sure quite a number of people here, especially those who were around 1992, addressing the troops. We were such a small force. And he was reminding everybody that the RPA, you young men and women fighting liberation struggle now will remain a big factor in transforming your country. That's the message. At a time we are fighting a war, but the vision and the ideology is clear. Yes, the commitment is not about now only. It's about looking far and beyond, so that clearly you know what you're doing, not for you now, but even for the future to get to where you want to be. A clear doctrine, therefore, that guides the RDF even today and other security institutions originates from that philosophy, from that thinking, from that vision. It's not something born today. It's something that originates, has its roots entrenched in that history. Let me add another quotation, because it's extremely important that this background is given. You remember when we were celebrating, when we were commemorating the 20th anniversary of the genocide against the Tutsi in Kigali, there was possibly the biggest gathering, bringing in people from all over the world, including many heads of states and governments. And I kept asking a question. How did Rwanda get out of that failed state situation to the current situation? Because everybody now was witnessing the results of the transformational journey, and the results were very clear. That Rwanda had reconstituted itself, and Rwanda was actually even modeling, in certain cases, in many cases, to other people in different parts of the world. Let me remind you the three answers that His Excellency gave. He said, unity of the people. And I will explain and give examples. 2, talked about transparency and accountability. And 3, he talked about thinking big, getting out of the box and thinking big. And went on to elaborate. I'm mentioning this because you see all these have a linkage to this collaboration that we are talking about. It's not a newborn. It has grown. But we can see where the journey begins. It begins from the time of the struggle, during the time of transforming and rebuilding, to the present. And I think we need to make all the efforts necessary to make sure that this culture grows and continues to future generations. And that's why I find this extremely critical and very important for us to be discussing this. To the officers who, and of course, other partners from all over whom we thank to be with us today, so that, yes, this is not only continued, but enriched and inherited and delivered as it should. So, RPF, RPA had this collaboration. In fact, those of you who remember very well, and I know quite a number of you do, the civilians played a very big part in our liberation struggle, providing even the resources that we were using to get to what we were doing. There was that collaboration, a pillar. Third point, but I must also underline the doctrine of the RPA, RDF, doctrine of the police, doctrine of all these other institutions that have a background and a basis of these times. Point number 3 that I want to underline. You see, if we define security and we define it narrowly, you lose the journey and the direction. You lose the direction and the journey. Security is a broad thing. Security is a broad concept. Sometimes people narrow it to physical security. But that's not all. Security is broad in nature and must be understood that way, so that if that concept is understood that way, we quickly understand that it requires multi-phased planning, joint contact, and countering threats to security. What kinds of security? I mean, security threats. Insurgency, terrorism, ethnic and religious conflicts, ecological deterioration. Yes, if the environment deteriorates to a level that you cannot be productive, people will die of hunger. You have not guaranteed security. I'm just mentioning a few, but I'm sure you know even many more. And I'm mentioning this because then, if you understand it that way, then the collaboration we are talking about is quickly understood and adopted and emphasized as a clear necessity in these jobs we do. Point number 4 I want to give is the double perspective of relating to the community in security consideration. What do I mean? You see, first of all, I have already mentioned the community, the citizenry, are beneficiaries of good security environment. But we cannot forget, like I mentioned earlier, the involvement of security of the citizenry in providing security. If you miss that, whether you are in police, whether you're in the army, whether you are in investigation departments like some of us here, you have lost. In fact, you make it difficult for yourself to. So involvement of the community in providing conditions that lead to that security, to a stable and security situation, is paramount. So they are not only beneficiaries, they are big contributors, they are major contributors to providing this security. And that must be realized by all agencies, and we collaborate to make sure that that is understood and happens. Let me mention something that is so obvious that you can read in different places, and you wonder if people are giving it any consideration. Public perception of the security forces, public security of the security forces is something that defines security in a very big way. What do I mean? If there is a poor perception, let me tell you, even a small threat is going to grow and cause you serious problems. You could build armor and all these other things. Public security, public perception goes down, security is going up. I don't want, it's not time now to, I think I'm giving a background, but I am sure when I mention this, you can read and even give examples from here and there. But when you have positive perception, and that's why the doctrine of the army, of the other institutions of security and leadership must be built such that the perception from the population is positive, you become partners, you collaborate, and you deliver. Let me give you simple 2 examples here that are general and understandable. After the liberation of this country, there was insurgency from the genocidal forces that were coming from the neighborhood. Those forces were defeated by a population that had already changed its attitude towards the forces that had a good discipline, the doctrine and discipline that had come close to them and mobilized them. Even in the neighborhoods here, these mountains you see here, the lakes. It's the population, the contribution by the population played a fantastic role to beat the insurgency. It's not only that time, even recently. Remember when there were attacks in this place here? Maybe I've been away for a long time, but it's here, I remember. And they tried to come. The population, the people, played a very big role in fighting off those genocidal negative elements. And it was quickly defeated. They identified them, they fought them, the army supported them, and the whole thing was done in the shortest time possible. So, I think I have, sometimes people misunderstand, I said deployment of military power. It's usually a last-time intervention, the military power. But the political and community-based solutions are very key and the predecessors to this whole arrangement. If you fail to mobilize that, you fail. So a multidimensional approach, therefore, in the security agencies must synergize and guarantee security of the state and its citizens, because it allows the integration of the different capabilities of the different security institutions and organs or agencies, whatever you want to call them. It ensures that integration of their different professional capabilities, because that's why you are now advancing. The professional capabilities to deal with particular situations are built. I want to make some addition to what was talked about. When some honorable minister did tell you how initially in this country, during that journey I was talking about, the RPA, the RPF, RDF did everything because the institutions were all completely destroyed. Everything, administrative, economy, the central bank had migrated, if it ever existed, but had migrated the neighborhood in Congo, and everything dead. So the only contributor were the military that was around to perform in every respect. Administration, justice if you want, everything. But because of that ideology and the background and the clear leadership, yes, they filled that gap and quickly began the process of building the transitions. So it's a history that people must remember, a history that informs the present, a history that tells us where we came from and gives us a direction where we must go. That's how, for example, as they told you, the National Police was formed in 2000. From 1994 to 2000, there was what was called the Gendarmerie. Gendarmerie was a paramilitary institution. It did not take on some of these ideological focuses that I'm talking about. So it had to transform. And the visionary leadership saw it and said, we must build a civil police. But it was not possible to do it immediately because the terms, the resources and everything was not possible. So we started in a small way by building, you remember the local, they were called the local defense something, a small, mobilizing the young people to join a local institution that was formed at the time. Until 2000, a lot of work was done, workshops, committees were set up to make sure that by the time we set this thing, it's clearly defined. And that's how in 2000, a decision was taken, yes, a police force must be built. The civil police must be built. And you know who formed it? Officers from the army, people from prosecution department, young graduates, lawyers, and everybody else. They told you that I was assigned to take on the responsibility of starting it. Not easy. But it was a choice. You had nothing to, like our leader continuously tells us, it's not about how easy or hard the choice is. If it's a correct decision, go for it. And so the police was built. Today, the Rwandan police is talked about as, an institution that is delivering not only in Rwanda, but even in foreign, in missions. We were hearing the other day the professor, a brother from South Sudan, talking about how our forces, our police mission there are going beyond the security element. the narrow definition of a security element, but even going for providing facilities for education, build schools, build hospitals, because those are critical and contributor to lasting peace, security. I can go on, and I think I'll have an opportunity to go on. Let me not, I just wanted to have that background, but so that when we discuss, we know where we came from, where we are, and where we are going. But to summarize, interagency cooperation in tracking security challenges and finding a solution to them is a do or die. It's an imperative for enhanced national security. Do it, or if you don't, you are faced in the wrong direction, and you'll suffer the consequences. By working together, agencies increase their effectiveness. They resolve availability of resources. They assist in the resolution of community needs. This is the path Rwanda has taken, and its security institutions, organs, pursue them under the very clear guidance of the Supreme Command. That's why, over the years, different agencies have been established. You have mentioned them: police, RIB, immigration, all other institutions that are clear. Many others will get formed as they get necessary, and these will grow to even become better capacitated to perform and deliver. Let me tell you that the cooperation is even growing to the level where joint training is even now becoming a reality. Why not? That I trained as a police, but there are certain aspects that you can train together with the army. I think our training institutions have started doing joint training, which is now moving to another level. Logistics planning and everything. But let me tell you, the growth, I'll end on this, maybe focusing now on I would be losing out if I didn't mention my current assignment, a very exciting one. After my time in diplomacy, I'm now, like they said, acting Chief of Staff, Reserve Forces. What does the Reserve Forces do? Reserve Force is an added service. RDF used to be RPA. Later, the Air Force, where Afande here is heading. He heads the Air Force. Recently, because of the need to intervene and interact with the community and go into developmental projects, the Reserve Force, to handle retirees from the army, to handle young people who may want to come and do a service in nation building with all the discipline that you develop when you do military training and everything. And this is now the Reserve Force, which I'm now being assigned to. I'm now the acting head, Chief of Staff, is doing fantastic things. All, by the way, built on the collaboration we are talking about. Let me just give one example. The model villages, one of them is up here. I wish we could have time to visit it. But they have many developed in the country. A model village in which the citizens are afforded, construct, homesteads that provide secure living and welfare. But it's also associated with health care, health centers, schools, TVETs where people can learn this and that. You have every aspect looked at in an integrated way. Do you know that to make that, it's also been growing, to make that happen quick and efficiently, fast, and with all the quality that you need, the speed that you need, and at a low cost, we've now reached a point where government set up what we call a steering committee. I'm very happy that the chairman of the steering committee is seated right here, the Honorable Minister of Defense. So that inter-ministerial forums are set up to say, we need a dispensary, we need a health center, we need a school, we need all these. They sit together and quickly, solutions are found. Then they give us. When I visit the places, I see some of the generals of my generation now managing projects like that, with all the discipline, with all the urge and the ideological aligning that they've developed through. Quickly, the thing is done, the quality is maintained, the cost is kept low, and you are seeing things happening. So I'm happy to be in that project with my graph certainly not going up, but going down in terms of energy, but I can use all the energy that I have to collaborate with everybody else because I understand that ideology. And I know, as we sit here, as all these other people, we need to do that and make that investment because it is critical and key. I thank you very much. I hope I didn't take too much time, but you gave me a long story to give a history, and I'm not a historian, so I had to. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thanks so much, General. That history was necessary and the philosophy that underpins it. Thank you so much. As you, just request you to look back on this, on the wording of this topic once again. It's on the screen. National interagency collaboration and coordination mechanisms for sustainable peace, security, and development. I trust that Rwanda Defense Force Command and Staff College, who framed this topic, they did deliberate. The choice of the words in this particular topic, each word is deliberate. You can see there is collaboration and there is also coordination. And they talk about mechanisms. And the end state, the objective is sustainable peace, security, and development. So we should all keep this at the back of our mind as we contribute to this very important topic. So I'm preparing the audience because very soon you'll begin chipping in. Now, let me turn to my left to the Secretary General of the Rwanda Investigation Bureau, RIB. RIB means Urubavu in Kinyarwanda. I don't know whether it was deliberate, but RIB means Urubavu, kandi Urubavu ni ikintu gikomeye. SG, Secretary General. The Rwanda Investigation Bureau was born very recently, in 2017-2018. So in other words, it's the youngest among all the other security organs in this country. I've been reading through the law establishing the Rwanda Investigation Bureau. It has very big powers for investigation, which the other agencies like the Rwanda National Police do not have. How have you been received by the other agencies which are much older? Have you been received with open arms or as a competitor? And are you supported in your job or you are frustrated? Because they say you are the youngest of the brothers, of the siblings. So sincerely, I want you to be honest and tell us. And second, there must be structures, the mechanisms for coordination with the other agencies. Tell us a few of the structures which exist today, the frameworks for coordination, specific ones. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Moderator, Honorable Ministers, the Commandant, distinguished guests, professors, students. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm very grateful to the Minister of Defense, and I take this as part of the collaboration we are talking about because it gives me a platform, an opportunity to talk about the institution I'm leading. As the moderator says it, RIB is only 3 years old. And it has been given very much powers of investigations, but I can assure you that the way I was received by other agencies was not frustrating. And you can see it even from the way the institution is growing very fast. Actually, I think being a newly established institution, we are the most beneficial, we benefit most from this collaboration. And I think if it was not that collaboration, maybe where we are today, it would have taken us maybe not less than 10 or 15 years to reach where we are. So my elders gave a very comprehensive background of our history, and it is the factor, the core factor that makes this collaboration becoming possible. I followed a discussion when I was still in the army among two officers, one from Rwanda Defense Forces, another one from police, Rwanda National Police. The Rwanda Defense Forces officer was complaining about the way police calls RDF. As you know, we call each other sister institutions. And he was complaining. He was saying, no, RDF is not your sister institution. It is your mother institution. I don't even know why it is a sister, not a brother. But going by the reasoning of that officer, then Rib would be the granddaughter of Rwanda Defense Forces. And for your information, Rib has got also a daughter. The Financial Intelligence Center, which was established, I think, a few months ago. So that to tell that the background of how these institutions were created gives us a basis to promote this cooperation and collaboration. So Rwanda Investigation Bureau benefits from that collaboration not only because it's a newly created institution, but also by the mandate it has. First of all, we are still very few, very thin on ground, and you have to deliver something tangible. Compiling a criminal case is not something that you can just do without facts, because it is cross-checked throughout the process, the judicial process. So having served under the military, under the police, gives me an advantage, because I have good network. I was lucky to serve. Being in police, I was the chief of intelligence. In the army, the same. So I have good network within staff and commanders. My other staff, the same, because RIB is formed by almost 80% of police officers. We are recruiting new staff, but still, we still have that culture that Afande Mugambaje mentioned, the RPA culture. The vision is still the same, and it is being transmitted throughout these newly created agencies that are being created for as the country is developing, we are specializing. So I think that is the logic of creating different institutions so that we can specialize. But we specialize by keeping the vision of RPA to develop this country, to create an environment that is safe for the people, for their properties, And when you look at the visions or missions of these represented institutions, you will find in each institution a statement of a safe country, safe people. We are lucky that our army is a modern army, it's not like traditional armies, which were focusing on territorial integrity. When you read through the mission of Rwanda Defense Forces, there's one statement talking about defend the territorial integrity and the national sovereignty of the Republic. But there is also to collaborate with other security organs in safeguarding public order and enforcement of law. You go to the police, you'll find the same. RIB, the same. So our end state, all of us, is to have a secured nation in which people and their properties are safe. The only difference is how we do it, depending on each specialty. So mine is just to tell you that we are a new institution that is growing and benefiting very much from the collaboration and the cooperation of other agencies. We have so many forums that put us together to deal with issues of security, including the daily joint operation centers that have a brief every day, every morning, in all districts, assessing the security of the country, the crime rate. So it makes us very close. And we also have the intelligence fusion cells that meet on a daily basis to assess the information around and produce intelligence that serve all of us in our different fields. So maybe to save time, I can stop there, then from the questions that I get from the audience, I can elaborate more. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kanoruhunga. So it's good that Tatis has assured us that he was well received by the older, I don't know whether sisters or brothers. That's very good. Now let me turn to the Rwanda National Police. Commissioner of Police Bizimungu, to my extreme right, is the commandant of National Police College, and he is here representing the Inspector General of Police, who has not been able to be present personally because of other urgent assignments.
First of all, I accept the difficult task you give me to talk about the police after Afande Mugambage has discussed it, because as it was said, in 1999, he was given the responsibility to create the new Rwanda National Police. So be tolerant with me, because he knows much more about the police than I. Now, let me ask your answer, sir. First of all, by explaining why and how we use firearms. We do carry firearms because of our... Yes. So it's on. It's because of the police mandate. Our mandate is to ensure the safety and security of the people who live in Rwanda and their property. So in order to reach that, to assume that responsibility, it's important to have the means to do so, because the police should be able to use force where it is necessary to use it. So we carry firearms, or arms in general, to prevent crime, to ensure public order, sometimes to stop crimes being committed. But it's important to note that although the police have the prerogative to use firearms, there are legal limitations. And we should know that the use of firearms, or the use of arms in general, the principle is that we should not use arms. The principle is that the police must execute its mandate without using force, without using arms. We will use arms in very, very exceptional circumstances, especially when we tried to use other means and we failed, or when we cannot achieve our objective without using arms. We are also allowed to use arms in self-defense. Self-defense, it's a natural right. Everyone is allowed to use that right. So when police officers are on duty and they are threatened, as any citizen or any person, police officers have that responsibility or that right, that prerogative to use arms in defending themselves. So there are so many limitations in using arms. One of them is that although we are allowed to use arms, and we know the definition of arms in law, an arm is any instrument which can be used to hurt a person or to kill a person. But within the police, there are types of arms which we cannot use. For example, a stick is an arm, legally, a stick, or even a pen. This pen can kill or hurt a person. But we are not allowed to use any arm. We have a list of arms and weapons that we are allowed to use, except in very, very exceptional circumstances where, in case of self-defense, there is no other possibility to save or to protect your own life. Then we are allowed to use some arms or weapons which are not officially authorized. For example, if I am attacked and there is a stone around or a stick, and the only way to defend myself is to use that stick or that stone, then I can use it. So very briefly, there are so many limitations. This is to say that we use arms very exceptionally, very, very exceptionally, and these limitations are legal. We also have other instructions from the Inspector General of Police which clarify the limitations of the use of arms. So very briefly, this is why we carry arms and how we do use arms. Now, to answer the question by Afande, the question was to know whether the police may be self-sufficient in using arms. The answer is that normally the police, which is in charge of internal security, it is the police which has the responsibility to use arms and to ensure internal security. The RDF has the responsibility for protecting the territory of the country. However, the police may be overwhelmed in some circumstances. In those cases, the RDF, the army, will support the police to ensure that the people of Rwanda or the people who live in Rwanda are safe and secure. So the answer is that because we must collaborate whenever the police will be in a position where it cannot assume its mandate, the Rwanda Defense Force will support and help the police. Now let me very briefly talk about cooperation. We do cooperate with different agencies. security agencies, even others. And it's a must, it's a necessity for many reasons. First of all, it has been said, Afanda has explained it very clearly. It's a directive, it's an instruction from our leadership, because to achieve the vision of our leadership, that interagency cooperation it's an approach which has been adopted. So it's a must. We have to cooperate with other institutions. We have a legal obligation to cooperate with other institutions. Even the Constitution, which is the supreme law of our country, in its Article 158, it stipulates that security institutions must cooperate. So it's a constitutional obligation. If I come back to the Rwanda National Police, the police law in its Article 40 also stipulates that the RNP must cooperate with other institutions and agencies, not only security agencies, even other agencies. So we do cooperate with almost all institutions which have different responsibilities in our country. So the areas of cooperation are not limited only to public order or crime prevention. We cooperate beyond that in the field of justice, disaster management, even economic development. We are conscious that, as Afanda said, security is not about just physical security. Human security is also a responsibility of the police. So we do cooperate with other institutions in that area beyond security institutions. For example, I'm going to give an example which goes with what has been explained before. We, as the police or security forces, we work for the people, and we must show the people that we are here for them. Not only show them that we are here for them, we must do it. An example which touches me, and I'm proud that we, as the RDF and the police, we do it. The example of blood donation. When we cooperate with the Ministry of Justice, when soldiers, military officers, police, when we lay on beds and give blood to people, this is very, very significant. It's very significant in the sense that when we go back in history, we realize that people used to fear the military, the police, because they used to kill them. But now, when we, people in uniform, give our blood to the people in cooperation with the Ministry of Justice, this is very, very important and very significant, and it shows the people that we are ready to give even our lives, and we do it for the people. This is an example of cooperation that the police does, because very frequently police officers give blood, they do blood donation, build houses for poor people, of course, in collaboration with RDF and other institutions. We never do that alone. We do it in collaboration with other institutions. And all these things are very, very critical in the context that has been explained by Afande Mugambage. So there are so many examples, but because of the pressure of time, I limit my example there. But let me very, very briefly talk about RIB. RIB is our lovely daughter, our lovely daughter. So we love very much RIB, and because RIB is our lovely daughter, we do everything possible, and the SG said it, to ensure that we accompany RIB in the process of building their capacity. We do joint trainings. I have the honor to lead the National Police College. We train together there. We train police officers together with RIB officers. We conduct joint operations. We share information. Now, it has been emphasized that maybe our experience working in different institutions also contributes to good cooperation. I am going to give an example of myself. Currently, I'm the commandant of the National Police College. But in the past, I have been chief of CID. I have been in the military. Now, as commandant of National Police College, I have the responsibility to train police officers, but also to train RIB. Now, when we are preparing to train RIB officers, my background as chief of CID helps me a lot. For example, when we prepare courses and programs, I have that background which allows me to know what RIB officers need today. What should we include in the program? How do we need to train RIB officers so that we can achieve what we want from them?
Kano Gatalaiha. I was reading the law of 2013 establishing the NISS, the National Intelligence and Security Service of Rwanda. And I find that you have a very tough job of gathering intelligence and sharing it with other agencies for timely response to thwart, to prevent attacks on Rwanda. This means this must be a tough job involving a lot of secret work. So how do you balance sharing the information you are able to gather to the other agencies, to the sister agencies here represented, at the same time preserving the secrecy and confidentiality that is required for you to do your job very well? Please go ahead.
Thank you, moderator, sir. Honorable ministers, commandants, sir, participants, and students. Let me start by thanking the leadership of RDF for the invitation extended to us, and the RDF Command and Staff College for organizing this National Security Symposium, where we are given an opportunity to discuss on this pertinent topic of national interagency collaboration and coordination mechanisms for sustainable peace, security, and development. To put my discussion into perspective, allow me, sir, to quickly touch a bit on NISS and its role in the national security sector. As its name suggests, and as you rightly mentioned, moderator, the National Intelligence and Security Service has a straightforward mission, which is to protect Rwanda's national interest by preempting threats through provision of quality and timely intelligence. And in alignment with this mission, NISS mandate is to provide timely and actionable intelligence and to advise the President as well as the institution of government on matters concerning national security interests. And the keyword here is actionable intelligence, and I'll come back to that a bit later. And to be able to deliver on this mandate, NISS is organized in 5 main functional arms, 3 of which are operational, and that is external intelligence and security, the one of internal intelligence and security, and the one of immigration and migration. plus, of course, 2 cross-cutting ones, the Administration and Finance and National Intelligence Academy. Now, NISS, like all the defense and security organs in Rwanda, have their roots in the national liberation struggle, as General Mugambaji has earlier mentioned. Right from their inception, these agencies were meant to play an active and pivotal role in the national transformation. General Mugambaji mentioned a famous quote that dates back in 1992 during the liberation struggle, where, while addressing the RPA, His Excellency Paul Kagame said clearly that our army is the foundation, and it is the one that will be the foundation of the transformation of our nation. Coming back to the question you put forth for me, Moderator, sir, the mandate of NISS is, of course, to provide timely and actionable intelligence, and how that is done, it has to be shared on a timely basis. You mentioned about the secrecy, the balance between the secrecy and that need to share information on time. By intelligence secrecy, of course, one means that the executive branch of every security agency has to determine who gets access to sensitive intelligence on sources or methods, and at times, covert operations. The reason is simple. It's because compromised sources or compromised technical methods of intelligence will often lead to the loss of those sources or the technical capabilities, or worse still, the exploitation by the target, the exploitation of that sensitive intelligence through misleading information as part of a more elaborate plan of deception, which can be very costly for the intelligence agency and the country. And so it's always important to have that secrecy in all aspects of intelligence. That's on one hand. On the second hand, as I mentioned before, any intelligence has to lead, any effective intelligence has to lead to an action against the target, to thwart whatever the target wants to bring as an effect against the intelligence community. And for that to take place, for an action to take place, the intelligence has to be actionable and timely, and shared on a timely basis. And so the question is, how do you strike that balance? Sharing of information amongst the intelligence community and the agency that is going to effect the required action. Because in most cases, you find that the agency that will implement the action or that will conduct any operation to effect that action is not necessarily the agency that has collected the intelligence. And you find that there will be many agencies that will have to cooperate to effect that action, to put that action in effect. And so there's always a careful balance that has to be stricken among that secrecy that is always required, which is of paramount importance in every intelligence aspect, and the timely sharing of information amongst all agencies, including the ones that are going to to implement that action. How to do it? Colonel Jeannot mentioned a number of frameworks that we have of sharing information amongst all the security organs. He mentioned joint operation centers and intelligence fusion cells at national, provincial, district, and sector level. That is one way of doing it. But we also have a number of other collaborative mechanisms. I'll talk about one example. Since I'm the head of immigration and migration, I'll use one example where we cooperate at all of our borders, which we manage. The management coordination of border operations is mainly coordinated by the immigration and migration, which is under NISS. But you find that we have joint operations that are conducted by members of all these institutions represented here: RDF, Rwanda National Police. For border security, they have a border security unit that ensures that all our borders are safe. Gazetted borders, of course. But you also have ungazetted borders that are still used by people. Well, people call them porous borders. And we know there are some illegal crossings, and those are manned by RDF. And so we have to keep cooperating. RIB is at all our borders because their mandate of investigation, although the immigration and migration arm of NISS has the prosecution powers, but we always work hand in hand with RIB to handle cases of illegal border crossings. Those are a few examples that I can talk about. Coming back to the interagency collaboration, when you look back at the post-genocide Rwanda, you realize that the people are really at the center of all government programs and actions. And for security organs, beyond the traditional mandate of safeguarding territorial integrity, national security, prevention of security threats, safeguarding public order, as Colonel Jeannot has mentioned, and ensuring compliance with the laws, Rwanda's defense and security organs have been equally tasked and consistently seen to contribute to the national transformation that seeks to achieve high standards of living for all Rwandans. And again, as observed by the Commander-in-Chief, His Excellency Paul Kagame, in his speech of the 4th July 2018, during the inauguration of one of the initiatives, General Mugambaji has mentioned the model villages. So during the inauguration of one of those model villages in Ndiza, Muhanga district, he said, and I quote, "Stability is built on a foundation of trust and rising of prosperity from which all citizens benefit. That is the logic behind our experience of our country, that an inclusive and consultative form of politics in which citizens and the private sector are fully involved offer the best prospects for security and human development," end of quote. Now, if I quickly double-click on this aspect of security and human development, again, under His Excellency's strategic guidance, various transformational policies have been put in place to foster a conducive environment for Rwanda's socio-economic development. One example is the Vision 2020, the famous Vision 2020 that we have, which was built around 6 pillars: good governance and a capable state, human resource development and knowledge-based economy, private sector-led economy, infrastructure development, productive and market-oriented agriculture, last but not least, regional and international economic integration. Now you can see that on each of these 6 pillars, the importance of security as a prerequisite for their success cannot be overstated. Another example of those policies that I can mention in support of Vision 2020 was the immigration policy that had to be put in place to support all those pillars. That policy was set up back in 2008, and it clearly has a vision which is clearly reflected as building a welcoming, prosperous, and secure Rwanda. And the mission in that line had to be reformulated to create a secure, enabling environment for increased trade, investments, tourism, and skills development through professional conduct and offering high-quality service. Now, with that policy, they had to be other changes. We had to review the immigration law to accommodate visas that would welcome all people from all over the world to come to Rwanda as part of that Vision 2020 mission. We had to initiate post-entry management strategy with specific entry visas that allow that movement of people, free movement of people. And with that, we had to increase security and intelligence operations at all our borders and awareness to leaders and local population on the benefits of that migration and regional integration. And so it was important to have increased collaboration among security organs in border control and management. I'll talk about policies that were implemented in that line. In 2013, we implemented the visa on arrival for all Africans. And in 2014, we implemented the use of identity cards for Rwandans, Kenyans, and Ugandans through all our borders and airports as a travel document. In 2018, the open visa policy for all citizens of the world, where everyone gets visa on arrival without applying for the visa prior to the travel to Rwanda. And recently, in 2020, free 30 days entry visa on arrival for all members from African Union, Commonwealth, and Francophonie. Along with the implementation of these policies, of course, came threats and challenges. They were mentioned by the previous speakers: transborder and organized crimes, including terrorism, drug trafficking, human trafficking, counterfeiting of travel and other documents. I mentioned the porous nature of our borders and interrelation among border communities, which attracts irregular crossings. And of course, immigration management challenges like overstays and influx of asylum seekers who are often abusing the open visa policy, etc., etc. So that free movement of people brought challenges to us all as security organs, and they are all at the core of the national security. And this called for collaboration mechanisms to be able to confront security threats associated with that movement of people, which is highly needed for us to achieve Vision 2020 while keeping our country secure. I talked about the joint border management and operations and coordinations. This also had to be put in the national migration policy which clearly states that effective border control and management shall be enhanced by collaboration by all security agencies as a fundamental in the fight against global threats. And there is an established national steering committee at the national level responsible for overseeing activities at all Rwanda border posts. And that presidential order determines the composition, responsibilities, and functioning of the Rwanda Border Post Steering Committee. And that committee is composed of members from NISS, which is the coordinating agency, Rwanda National Police, which ensures border security through its border security unit, RIB, to deal with cross-border crimes investigations, Rwanda Revenue Authority for custom clearance of all goods, RDB for border tourism facilitation, Private Sector Federation for business community coordination, and different ministries, including the Ministry of Defense. I mentioned the security at the ungazetted borders, local government, infrastructure for all our border infrastructure, Ministry of Health to deal with pandemics like the one that we are dealing now, the COVID-19, Ministry of Trade and Industry, coordination of trade, cross-border trade, and agriculture for import and exports of animal and agricultural products. So to conclude my remarks, the achievements registered in the last 27 years are a result of constant collaboration and joint efforts from all government institutions, and the role of security organs and that of the population is clearly pivotal in the already witnessed economic transformation and human development. The collaboration and coordination among security organs, judiciary, local leaders, and residents in general have largely helped in curtailing national security threats that came along with the implementation of policies aimed at building Rwanda as a welcoming and enabling environment for increased trade and investment. I thank you, sir.